September 480 BCE. On the island of Salamis, the surviving Greek commanders crowd into a single tent, and the alliance holding them together is one bad sentence away from falling apart. Athens is ash. Most of the men in that tent have already lost everything north of where they're standing, and the Peloponnesian commanders want out. Back to the Isthmus of Corinth, behind a wall they've already started building, away from a fight they don't believe they can win. Themistocles rises to argue against retreat, and before he gets 3 words out, the Corinthian commander Adamantus cuts him down in front of the room. A man with no city left has no business directing men who still have one to defend. It's not an unfair jab, but Themistocles doesn't flinch from it. He reminds the tent of a fact nobody wants spoken aloud. Athens may have lost its walls, but its fleet is still afloat, and that fleet makes up half the ships in the water. Pull Athens out of this alliance, and there is no alliance left to retreat anywhere. There's only every city-state fending for itself against an empire that has already swallowed everything north of the isthmus. He goes further. If the council insists on running for Corinth, Athens will simply load its families onto those ships and sail for new shores entirely, leaving the rest of Greece to face Xerxes alone. It isn't a threat so much as an arithmetic lesson nobody in the tent can argue with. The retreat dies in that tent, unspoken but understood by everyone present. When the Spartan admiral Eurybiades finally asks where, then they should make their stand, Themistocles already has an answer. Right here, in the strait between Salamis and the mainland. Barely a mile wide, hemmed in on both sides, with no room for a larger fleet to spread out and use its numbers. In open water, he argues, Persia's superior seamanship would tear the Greeks apart before they ever closed the distance. In a bottleneck this tight, numbers stop being an advantage and start being a liability. Ships crowding ships, captains losing sight of their own formation, orders that never reach the front. It's a fight built for boarding and ramming at close range, which happens to be the one thing Greek crews do better than anyone in the Persian fleet. The obvious problem is that Xerxes has no reason to sail 1,000 ships into a trap willingly. Themistocles says nothing more about that point, but something is already taking shape behind his eyes, and he has no intention of explaining it to the room. That night alone, Themistocles calls for Sisinus, a household servant who speaks Persian fluently and has his complete trust. The instructions are simple. Row across to the Persian camp, ask for an audience with the king, and deliver a message claiming to come from the Greek commander himself. The alliance is fracturing. The Peloponnesians intend to flee before sunrise. By morning, half the Greek fleet will be gone from these waters. None of it is true. If anything, the opposite just happened. Themistocles spent the evening making absolutely certain the fleet wouldn't scatter. But he's gambling on something he understands better than most. A king who has already burned Athens and crushed every army Greece put in front of him isn't bracing for a trap. He's expecting the rest of the war to be a formality. Across the water at the Persian camp in Phalerum, Xerxes is holding his own war council, and the room is unanimous. Strike now, while the Greeks are outnumbered and divided, and end this tonight. Only one voice disagrees. Artemisia, the queen of Halicarnassus, the sole woman commanding ships in the Persian fleet, and apparently the only person in the tent willing to contradict the king. Her argument is the soundest one in the room. Athens is already destroyed, and a march toward the Peloponnese would unravel what's left of the Greek alliance without risking a single ship. Xerxes hears her out, respects her more than any other commander present, and overrules her anyway. He wants the war finished by morning. Then Sisinus's message arrives, and it tells him exactly what he was already hoping to hear. He gives the order immediately. Seal both ends of the strait tonight, and trap the entire Greek fleet before dawn. No one in that tent pauses to wonder whether the message might be a lie. The Persian fleet rose through the night to take up its blockade, crews exhausted from hours at the oar in total darkness, packed into a channel far narrower than any of their commanders had accounted for. All of it spent guarding against a Greek retreat that was never coming. At dawn, Themistocles walks the shoreline at Salamis, calling the crews to their ships with a single message. Everything they have left, homes, families, the graves of their ancestors, depends on what happens in these narrow waters today. The shore answers him with a roar, and the boarding begins. When the sun comes up, the Persians don't find a fleeing enemy. They find 370 Greek ships arranged 2 ranks deep across the strait, stationed deliberately. Athenians anchoring the left, the aggressive Aeginetan squadrons holding the right, smaller contingents packed into the center. Above them, on the slopes of Mount Aigaleo, Xerxes takes a throne built for exactly this moment, ready to watch his fleet finish the war. The Greeks hold their position and let the Persian formation press deeper into the strait before a single Greek captain breaks rank and rams the nearest enemy ship. The entire Greek line surges forward behind him, and the strait turns into chaos almost instantly. Hulls splitting, oars shattering, men thrown overboard before the real fighting even starts. The Persian front line stalls against the Greek wall, but the ranks behind it keep pushing forward into ships that have nowhere left to go. Persian vessels begin colliding with other Persian vessels, crushing their own oarsmen between hulls, while only the very front of their formation can fight at all. The Athenians grind into the Phoenician squadrons with brutal discipline, and Greek marines, fully armored, unlike many of the lighter Persian crews, board disabled ships and finish what the ramming started. On the southern end, the Aeginetans seal off any vessel trying to slip away. At one point, Xerxes watches Artemisia, the same commander who warned him against this battle, get cornered by a pursuing Athenian ship with no clean escape route. She solves the problem by ramming a Persian vessel, blocking her path, sinking it outright. The pursuing Athenian assumes she must be an ally and breaks off the chase. Xerxes, watching from his hillside throne, reportedly remarks that his men have started fighting like women, and his women like men. By afternoon, the Persian formation has broken entirely. Ships fleeing toward Phalerum run straight into the Aeginetan line, waiting at the strait's southern mouth. When the wreckage finally settles, Persia has lost somewhere around 200 to 300 ships. The Greeks have lost roughly 40. Without naval control, Xerxes can no longer move troops or supplies freely along the Greek coast, and the invasion he expected to finish in a single season is no longer his to control. Fearing the Greeks might sail north and sever his bridges across the Hellespont, he withdraws the bulk of his forces back toward Asia, leaving his general Mardonius behind with the empire's best infantry and a single order: finish the conquest when spring comes. Salamis hasn't ended the war. Greek soil is still occupied, and an undefeated Persian army is still wintering in Boeotia. But for the first time since Thermopylae, the Greeks believe the war is winnable, and the next test of that belief won't happen at sea at all. It will happen on an open plain near a small town called Plataea.